Good morning. It's Thursday, May 6th. Today we continue the Beatitudes, and the one we have today is Blessed are you when you're persecuted for righteousness' sake. What's the rest of it? Let me look. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And I think what Jesus is saying is, you're going to be persecuted, but it's going to be all right because you will inherit the kingdom. So what does he mean there? What does it mean to be persecuted for righteousness' sake? Sometimes in this pluralistic society in which we live, people think that anytime anyone says anything that conflicts with or questions or opposes their particular view of Christianity, that they're being persecuted. It's not so. It's not persecution if someone wishes you happy holidays at Walmart instead of Merry Christmas. That's not persecution, folks. And if you think that it is, you really need to stop and think some more, because it's not. We live in a society where huge numbers of people are of other faiths. Increasingly in this society, we see religious groups that no one ever heard of before. We don't live in the 50s, anymore. We're in the 2020s, and it's a very pluralistic society. There are lots of different groups, and we have to live together, in some kind of peace. And there's religious freedom. And that doesn't mean freedom to be a Christian. That means freedom to have the religion that I choose. And so if I choose a different religion, that's my right, and that's my freedom. And sometimes we Christians have a hard time with that because we're accustomed to being on top. We're accustomed to being the only ones. And Jesus talks as though we might find persecution coming our way. Now, at a personal level, what would that mean? I think we usually think of that in terms of our own personal witness and personal behavior. I was with a guy one time who was quite the sort of obvious Christian. He always made a point about his Christianity. And one night I was going to supper with him, and we stopped to ask somebody else if they were coming. And there were a bunch of people in this dorm room, and I really don't know what they were doing, except that the lights were low, and 6 or 8 people sitting in there in the dark, and someone in the room said, "No, we're going to supper later." And then somebody said, "Why are you hanging out with him?" to me. And before I could understand what was being asked, he responded. He says, "Oh, we're good friends. He's a Christian too." And this guy says, "Rockmore's not a Christian. He goes out to the beer hall with us," or something. And I realized to my chagrin that I wasn't as publicly a witness as I wanted to be. And I had to think about how I did things and what I did in public so that other people would see my faith. And they did eventually over the course of several years. So when we're acting a certain way in public, you want to be careful that you're not sort of in your face Christian and pushing people away from the gospel, but at the same time that you're being true to what you believe and true to the gospel and to the ethical standards of the gospel as you understand them to be. Those are difficult things, and persecution comes when people who don't like Jesus, don't like the gospel, want it to go away. They sort of push back. And sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's very obvious. So I hope that you can get through the whole day without being persecuted. But if you are, don't worry, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. and we'll talk more tomorrow.